Hi, everybody. It's Spencer Whelan and
Sarah Whelan. Hi, guys.
And we are here for the beginning of the Taste the Trail series, which is going to. Sarah, why don't you tell them why you decided to do this?
How many days can we embarrass Sarah on the internet? 19. That's how many days we can do it.
We might extend it to 20 if we're lucky.
Oh, Lord. Okay, so I actually came up with this idea myself because many of my friends and folks who know me before we started the Texas Whiskey Trail and started doing all this stuff are kind of like, okay, like, you know, come over to the side here, tell me the truth. You don't really like this, right? And I'm like, no, I actually do like whiskey. I did not like it in the beginning. I'll be completely honest. I am honest to folks. Like, I haven't ever pretended that I was some connoisseur that I was not. I grew up in a family that we just really didn't have alcohol in the house. My dad was a pastor and we just didn't have it. And so I didn't have any exposure to it. And I actually distinctly remember my first experience with Scotch was on like our second date, I think, that we ever had. We met on eHarmony, and it's a very long story for another podcast. But anyway, we were on a first official date and he ordered a Lagavulin. And I was like, okay.
Lagavulin 16.
Sure. And he handed it to me to smell. And I was like, I either said it smells like plastic or it smells like grass.
Plastic. Yeah. Well, and both.
Yeah. And I was like, yeah, no thanks. Hard pass. I'd like another Cosmo, please.
Yeah.
And we went on about our way. So
she was very into Sex and the City at that time as well. So.
Yes.
That was the drink of choice.
Right. So turns out my grandmother lives about 10 minutes from Buffalo Trace in Frankfort, Kentucky. And I had no idea. I did not know about what I was missing all those years of going to Kentucky like 2-3 times a year. Like never darkened the door of one of those places. So we eventually snuck away one trip to go check it out.
5 years of marriage.
5 years of marriage. And I finally was like, okay, we can go to a distillery now. And we checked it out and it was great. So fast forward to this idea that you had and we're working on, and we were finally getting going, and I was starting to participate in it. And I just was like, I would taste things and I just hoped I didn't need Tums afterwards. That was usually
that was the metric of a good or bad whiskey.
Right. I have reflux issues and, whatever. But I started drinking it more and more because we were around it more and more. And then I really started to like it. But what I have not developed is any ability to nose or taste and pick up any like tasting notes.
Yes.
Like if you watched the video the other night, you saw me confuse a rye and a bourbon because they roughly smelled the same to me. So I thought this would be interesting to do a series where we go through the entire trail. Everyone can kind of see products from each distillery since you are staying at home, which is so good, and you can't go out and check them out for yourselves. Well, let's go through and maybe in 19 evenings, we can teach me how to nose and taste. I'll be happy if I get one note from each whiskey. Like, that will be awesome.
Josh is right. I am a Lagavulin guy.
Yes. So that is what kind of sparked the idea for this thing. But also I talked to a lot of people out there who I say, oh, do you like whiskey? And they are like I was a couple of years ago. They're like, no, I don't like it. Like, I like mixed drinks, or it's too intimidating. Or I went on a date once and the guy was a jerk and was totally arrogant about it. And like, so we just want to do away with all that. Like, I'm going to be completely honest. I have no shame. So we're just going to go for it. And maybe it'll work well.
Yep.
And maybe I'll be really embarrassed. I don't know. Or maybe both.
So let's just take a step back for a second and talk about what, this is why we're doing it.
Yes.
And we've had this idea for a little while, but this kind of shelter in place order has kind of made it very important that we all do this.
Yeah.
And this is a way for us to engage on the trail without being on the trail. As you know, if you're tuning in for the first time, the Texas Whiskey Trail was formed less than a year ago. Memorial Day of 2019 was the first weekend of the trail. Mm-hmm. Actually, the very first place that we went to as a trail was Andalusia Whiskey Company.
That's right.
So we went with the Propes Guild. So if those of you that are part of the Propes Guild were there with us, and Ty, who will be joining us here in just a second, was the first distiller to engage with trail members.
Yeah.
And that was a really fun thing. So it's not just because it's alphabetical, but it's also a little bit of an ode to how we started the trail last year. But for those of you that are interested in the trail, go to texaswhiskeytrail.com. You can sign up and become a member. Mm-hmm. We're giving everybody that signs up between now and Memorial Day, which again is our 1-year anniversary, you will get 2 free months of trail membership. So you get 14 months for the price of 12. It's a 1-year membership. If you're currently a member, you're also going to get an extra 2 months while we're all sheltering in place and staying home. And we are also putting together something that we've talked about on the previous podcast, but that's around the Still Strong TX effort to get all of our distilleries on the trail to participate in or as many as they can, to participate in the creation of hand sanitizer for the COVID-19 outbreak. Folks, it's not going to be fun over the next few weeks in the real world. So we're asking you for at least an hour on the nights. Come join us, and we're going to talk whiskey, and we're going to taste our way through the trail. So that's the whole goal of this. Yeah. Please join us on the trail if you can. But let's get started with Andalusia. So
I should say there was this one rule that came up for me, and I haven't mentioned it yet. So my rule is that I'm not allowed to say anything about whether or not I like what I'm drinking. Yes. Just have, and the goal is to hopefully that will make me find a note. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. Basically the idea is if you're one of those people out there that is kind of like, I like it, or I don't like it, or this is good, or this is bad, or I like it in a mixed drink. Yeah. All of that is fine. But we're going to try to go a level deeper into appreciation and say, you can't talk about goodness or badness. You have to talk about the notes. And that can sound pretentious. And we're going to talk about that a little bit here with Ty, but that can sound pretentious, but it's not. There are actual compounds that are existing in other things that you smell, taste, and experience in life, and this will help you understand those things.
And while I've sampled some of these before at other times, I have not had them leading up to this to try to prepare so that I can know what to say.
That's right.
I don't have any idea what he poured in what, and this is very much blind.
We'll talk about that, but first let's introduce our special guest for tonight. The man who helped us kick off the trail, Ty Phelps. How are you, Ty?
Hi, Ty.
Hey, guys. Good to be with y'all.
Good to be with you. Thank you so much for joining us today. And everybody, forgive me for my eyes kind of going up and down from the camera and not. We're trying our home setup here, and it's a little bit wonky, but we're going to get better over 19 nights. We hope.
We hope.
But so Ty, where are you joining us from?
So I am at home. I live actually right next door to the distillery. So I'm out in Blanco. We're on kind of a ranch. And so existence for us isn't all that different necessarily, because the distillery is still open, and I'm out here on a ranch kind of by ourselves. But it's definitely been a crazy time for sure. Absolutely. Yeah.
So let's talk just briefly about what you have done in Blanco for the Still Strong Texas efforts and creating sanitizer, or just at least high proof alcohol for people that need it in your community.
Yeah. We produced some high proof alcohol for first responders. That was kind of our first priority. Fire, EMS, police. We did all that at no charge. Kind of the next layer that we've kind of gotten into in the last couple of days is delivering sanitizer to essential businesses. These are your restaurants, your hotels, your gas stations, your grocery stores, folks that aren't really getting paid a whole lot of money to come to work every day and face this virus. And so we wanted to be able to get as much of that out as we can. And our next step will be releasing it to the public. And that'll hopefully happen this week.
Great.
Sometime.
Awesome.
Well, Ty, thank you for what you're doing. This is obviously out of the comfort zone of a lot of us, but we're doing what we can. So thank you.
I never imagined that as distillers would be the kind of the people that could really help the community the most at this time. We sell booze. It's nothing to be ashamed of, but it's nothing to be that crazy proud of either. And so it's really cool to actually be able to actually produce something that's really helpful for the community.
Yeah. 10 years ago, did you think that Texas would need distilleries as an essential business for everyday life?
Never. Never. Well, there weren't any. So yeah, I guess not. So.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, okay, well, enough about what's going on in the real world. Let's kind of go inside of our own little homes and talk whiskey for a little bit. So Ty, you were mentioning it before we started here, but tasting notes are difficult, and sometimes people can perceive them as pretentious. Tell us a little bit about your history in craft brewing and why those tasting notes matter, not just because they're fun to talk about, but because they're actually real.
Yeah. So to Sarah and to all the other folks that are kind of struggling putting words to what they're tasting, that is very, very difficult. Don't be ashamed. There is nothing wrong with that.
Thank you.
That is the most difficult part of kind of getting into spirits, because you'll hang around people that will talk about all the different tasting notes they're getting out of a spirit, and all you can kind of say is whether or not you like it or not.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with liking something or not. But everyone can do that really easily, and so it's not really all that helpful to the overall discussion, and so it's tough. So that is very hard, and you can drink, beer or wine or spirits for 20 or 30 years and get nowhere on that without training, guidance, or mentorship. And so that's really, I think, really what I was a craft brewer, and so that's really kind of what got me into this. I took some flavor and kind of taste training courses, and they've really carried over into food and to spirits and to a lot of other realms that I really never imagined. But it was that training, really being able to put words to my tastes.
Right.
I was able to do it through seminars where they would spike, like it would be a beer seminar, and they would spike that little sample of a beer with a crazy high sample of diacetyl. So much so that you'll never forget what that tastes like.
Right.
And so it's training like that, or tastes like that. And so hopefully, like maybe tonight, we'll be able to taste a few things. I'll be able to maybe plant a seed, and then you can say, yes, I do taste that. And then maybe the next time you taste a spirit, you'll be able to taste that again and identify it.
Awesome. I'm game.
Yep. So this is how we're going to start. I have 4 Glencairns capped here for us. If you probably can't see them too easily, but let me just kind of show you here. This is what we got, and Ty, we thought we had triple distilled, but it's gone. We drank it all. so you had your other 2 bottles of your core lineup.
Donated it.
Oh,
for the elementary school gala.
That's what it was.
Yeah. I think I donated.
Well, we drank another bottle, so we drank the one, and then the one that the leftover we had, we donated to a bottle giveaway at a fundraiser. So, but instead of that, so what we decided to do to kind of make everything equal is we had the three core whiskeys, which are triple distilled, Revenant Oak, and Striker. And do you want to talk about the difference between those 3?
Yeah, sure. The triple distilled is probably the most similar to an Irish whiskey. It has no smoke character whatsoever, so the malt really shines through on that one. The Revenant Oak is the most similar to a kind of a peaty Scotch, for example. We peat smoke malt in house, and then so it's kind of very traditional still. And then Striker, we feel, is a little more innovative. It has a little more of a Texas twang to that smoke. Instead of using peat, we use hardwoods to smoke the malt like barbecues. So Irish and Scotch style whiskeys, and then definitely a little bring it home and make it your own kind of Texas whiskey as well.
So what we decided to do is take that core lineup of the triple, the Striker, and the Revenant, and the first 3 are all the PX finished versions of them, which you released at Christmas time in this
they were so good.
in this box right here.
And I'm actually going to join you guys here.
Oh yeah, please.
Yes.
Please join us.
In my set here as well, so we can.
Ty,
we
do
can
you
taste
still
the
have
wine.
some of this set for sale in the
We do.
tasting room?
We do. Yep. We'll have it for probably another few months in the tasting room.
Okay, cool.
Hey, Jacob Moon has a question there for you while you're pulling out the bottles here. Where do you get the peat?
Yeah. Okay. Jacob, we get it from Ireland, the Copperbond region of Ireland. It's hard to find peat. We actually found it. It's sold in the U.S. for people that were born and raised in that area of Ireland or Scotland. they're used to burning peat in their fireplace, and they want to burn it in their fireplaces here at home. And so we're able to order bricks of peat from Ireland here to Texas. We're one of the few distilleries in America to peat their own malt.
Nice.
Yeah.
Because peat, does it grow anywhere in the States?
It does.
You know, there's probably a lot of peat available. I know there's distilleries up in the Northwest, like Westland, that is having success mining peat up in Washington, Oregon, the Northwest coast. Traditionally, it's been in cooler environments. Recently, I was watching a documentary about a bog fire in the Gulf Coast. So who knows? Yeah, find me some peat in Texas, somebody, please.
Yeah, no
not the spicy sauce, but Texas peat, like PAT.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna go through, and what I thought might be a good solution for this particular part of it is you kind of described the three, but let's pick one distinct note from one of those three that know every time when you taste it, you're like, that's whatever, that's Striker or that's Revenant. So what kind of note would you ask her to look for, and then on the nose first, and then we'll have her try these and see what she thinks.
Okay, so
you're just going to try to find that one note that he mentions.
Okay, I can do that.
Okay, so not talking about a particular whiskey, but more talking about the note itself.
Talk about a note of like Striker, like if there's a note in Striker that that you can capture it almost every time, where you're like, oh, that's it. And then maybe let's see if she can find it.
I can tell her what whiskey it is. Okay.
Yep.
So I'd say the triple distilled in this set is the one that really showcases the sherry the most. And so we're going to talk about a flavor note that is very sherry specific. The triple distilled doesn't have any smoke in it whatsoever. And so that's the one we feel that the sherry really shines through the most. The Irish triple distilled is sort of like a blank canvas, so the sherry really shines, and so you're going to be looking for raisins in that one. Sherry has I'm going to give you two almonds and raisins. So when I say raisins, that one's pretty obvious. The almonds isn't quite as obvious, but think like an almond liqueur, such as amaretto or something like that. That flavor of almond, without the sweetness, obviously, of amaretto, but the kind of fruit and nut combination is, I think, what shines through the most in the Irish.
Okay, I think the second one has some smoke to it. So I actually think this first one might be the triple distilled, but I haven't smelled the third one yet.
Okay.
But I smell smoke on that one. So
you smell smoke on the second one?
Yeah.
Here, let's keep them capped so that you can trap those aromas.
Oh, okay. Oops. I'm already wrong.
Folks. Here we go, folks.
Because this one doesn't smell like smoke either. Oh man.
Yeah.
This is my favorite.
And maybe we'll need
this is gonna be so great.
See, I think I'm getting more of the sherry on this one.
Okay. So why don't you compare the two?
Yes, I get almond in this one. I did not get almond in the first one.
You're getting almond on this one, but not on this one. Go back to this one and see what you think.
See, now in comparison to the first one, I feel like this one smells smokier.
Okay. And you see, that's important too. And Ty, you talk about this a lot, but
yeah. Oh, I just got a whiff of it. Oh, I got some real smoke on that one.
See? Yeah.
Okay.
But it's your nose can get used to it, right? Like your nose can get used to a pattern.
Yeah.
So if you're in that pattern, having a variation will all of a sudden open up a note that you didn't have before.
Okay, I think just on the nose. Oh wait, I'm getting too confident here.
Well, what y'all are doing is really important too, because the side-by-side experience is what's so important. It's very difficult to taste something and then try to compare that to an experience you have tasting something a day later or a week later. You have to have the samples right next to one another and taste them together if you really want to kind of compare them effectively.
Yeah, and as much as we can, we're going to try to do like a triad like this so that we have three-way variation so that you can compare.
Right.
You can narrow one out and then do a side by side if you had to.
Should I make a guess as to what I think they are based on the nose?
Sure.
Okay. So I think this one, so the third one I smelled, I think is the triple distilled. I think the second one is the Revenant Oak. And I think the first one I smelled is actually the Striker.
This one, do you think this one's Striker?
Well, the way you just, I got it right. I did it. Yes.
Hey.
Ty, you did a really good
Redemption.
job explaining what to
Yeah.
look for. If you hadn't done all that, I wouldn't have gotten that.
But isn't that interesting though?
Yeah.
Like your brain knows
Yeah.
almonds and your brain
Mhm.
knows raisins. And you're looking for that isolated character compared to other
Yeah.
things that are more smoky and overlaying
Right.
it.
And
Right.
then when I compared the two smoky ones, the Striker smelled like it had more of a kick to it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So Ty, if you don't mind talking.
I'm impressed you're able to do that just by smell also and not by taste as well. So
Well, look
that's
at me. Aren't I a fancy whiskey sniffer?
Good job. Yeah.
Is that a thing? A whiskey sniffer?
A whiskey sniffer?
It should be.
Yeah.
That's a good title.
Hashtag whiskey sniffer. Okay, so
Okay.
Ty, talk a little bit about like malt characteristics versus say bourbons, where you're gonna like bourbons are obviously new charred oak barrels, and some people think that they're getting the smoke from that. And oftentimes people say, "Oh, I'm smelling char or smelling something like that." But in this case, you're actually taking Texas hardwoods on Striker and smoking the grain itself. So talk a little bit about how that comes through all the way through the distillation.
Yeah, sure. Kind of the last step in making peated malt is they'll dry the malt by smoking it essentially. We receive our malt already malted, and so we'll kind of take one step back. We'll moisten the malt just a little bit, just get it a little bit wet, and then we will put smoke on it for 24 hours. Depending on the whiskey, if it's Revenant Oak, we'll do peat. If it's Striker, we'll do hardwoods. We'll layer our hardwoods with oak and mesquite and applewood to kind of just get that perfect flavor profile. And just by smoking that malt for 24 hours, you'll get that smoke flavor. It is a common misconception about char in a barrel. Char is essentially carbon. It's doing nothing but removing color and flavor, almost like your Brita filter is.
Oh yeah,
It's the layer right behind.
We've got these bags of, I don't know if you've seen it before. They're like, it's char and charcoal in a bag that you put in a room, and it like deodorizes. I have it in the hall closet with all the shoes to try to make it smell a little less gross in there. And it works. It's crazy. It totally works.
So you're not really smelling char when you're when people say they're smelling it, like there is a charred scent.
Yeah.
But that's usually the smoke that's coming off of a charred item, not the char.
Correct. Yeah. And luckily in a barrel, there's a lot more than just that charred layer going on. There's more of a toasted layer right behind it. So the fire that creates the char layer creates a kind of a toasted red layer behind that char, which is really where the caramelized wood sugars are found. That's where you're going to get all the color and flavor and beautiful aromas from whiskey. The char itself, is not doing a whole lot. It really, if anything, it's filtering the whiskey or removing color and flavor.
Yeah. So now that do you have one that, like you said, is standing out every single time? Is it Striker that's standing out to you the most, or is it the Revenant because of the smoke?
What is like I can quickly tell what it is? I mean, I actually think I have to go with the Thai on the triple distilled because it's so. It's kind of
you're getting the cherry.
I'm getting a sweetness to it, which is my preferred taste. Is for something to be sweet. So that makes sense that I'd be drawn to that. And I definitely am getting almond. That's probably the one thing I could say I'm getting off the nose from the triple distilled. And
I think it's also interesting, Ty, like I grew up in Texas, she grew up in Seattle, right? So when you grow up around an area, their family were like chocolates and sweet things, and that's kind of, it was their palate, and salmon, and a lot of different kinds of like alder plank smoked salmons and stuff like that. So the smoke profile that they were used to up there is different than down here. Whereas like I can pick out Striker in a second because I know what oak and mesquite smell like every single time. Right.
Yeah,
because I've been having that since like birth. Basically.
Yeah. I would say from the Striker, I get like barbecue.
Yep.
It kind of smells like barbecue being cooked.
And that's because you've lived in Texas now for 12 years.
And I'm married to this dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We layer our woods intentionally. We feel oak is sort of the backbone. It's the majority of the wood we use. It's kind of the brisket, wood that's used most often. Applewood is sort of our flavoring agent, good for smoking chicken or something like that. And then mesquite is our accent. And so we use a smaller amount of mesquite because it's a sharp, very obvious flavor.
Yeah.
And by intentionally layering those, we feel we get a much fuller, kind of richer, more enjoyable smoke.
And when I say barbecue, I think that's actually what I mean, is the smell, like the wood chips in the grill or the smoker, not the meat itself, but the process of making it, like what you smell like when you walk into like Cooper's or Rudy's or something like that, and you can smell them cooking.
Yep. And I think, you have a smoke house on property there that you have run lots of different runs through. So like that smoker itself has a flavor profile that is not going to be anywhere else in the world, right? Because
for sure. Part of the fun experience of the tour of the distillery is you get to step inside of the smokehouse, even when it's not running. You can step inside and it gets on you. Just by stepping inside and getting near the damn thing, you get inundated with the smoke, and it's on you until you shower again, for sure.
Now the second one, I'm like struggling to like get a note. Like I want to say moss, but I feel like I'm saying that because I know that it's peat, right? Like I don't know that I'm really smelling that.
And that's interesting because like you hit on exactly is that when you're influenced at all, right, you're going to start to smell and taste those things. If somebody tells you, "Oh, do you smell banana?" and all of a sudden you get banana, right?
Absolutely.
So that your brain is a very complex thing, and influence matters a lot, and that's why marketing matters a lot, right? If you've marketed it a certain way, or if you put your bottle in a certain color, people will start to think that way, right? I mean, ryes are a great example. Almost every rye on the market has a green label of some sort, right? And I think
why is that? Just to signify, like,
I think it's because rye is a grass, and it comes. You get kind of that cut grass meadow flavor in rye, and kind of that peppery, sharp, grassy flavor. And I think it's been a way to distinguish it and help people think, oh, I'm tasting a rye.
Right. Which is so funny because I tend to really like ryes, which seems so weird to me because usually I like the sweet. I'm usually don't love it when it's really like when it smells really peaty or really mossy. Like usually I don't love that whiskey in my like or love designations that I've kind of lived in. So I think it's interesting that I usually like ryes.
Yes.
I don't know what that means, but
let's see what a couple of folks are saying here. Let's say Kyle Woolsey says Striker is a great pour for days. When you're smoking a brisket, you can drink what you smell. I love that.
That is a fact.
Yes.
We had an old rancher come in early on in the early days of the distillery, and he was tasting and kind of being mum about his thoughts, and really you could kind of tell was holding back, and said, "Sir, what do you think about the whiskey?" And he just kind of shook his head and said, "Son, it tastes like brisket." And I think he thought he was disappointing me, and that was a fantastic moment. I said, "You got it, you nailed it right there."
Well, and you took a Scottish tradition and you put a Texas flavor on it,
right?
And I think that's something that is unique about Texas whiskeys, and worldwide, everybody thinks, oh, Texas or any American whiskey is going to be a bourbon, right? And there's a very distinct flavor profile for what American bourbons are and American ryes are. And in Texas, there's as many single malts as there are bourbons and ryes. And I think we're doing some pretty impressive stuff, and you guys are definitely leading the way.
So when do we get to start drinking this?
Well, that's what I was about to ask Ty. Ty, what?
I'm way ahead of you guys over here. Yeah.
Yeah. Is there a flavor note that you would recommend, or from any of these, not just on the nose, but a flavor note that is very distinct in your opinion from one of these three?
Yeah, probably. I think Striker, you're going to get that vanilla character more than the others. Striker is aged in a new barrel like bourbon, and so you're going to get a lot more of those sweet vanilla characters. Now, it's also going to be smoky, and so that's one thing that differentiates the Striker from the Revenant Oak is that the Striker is a sweet smoke, not only from the wood, but from the vanilla character, versus Revenant Oak, which is more of a dry smoke. Revenant Oak is more of a phenolic smoke, but then also the whiskey is aged in a used barrel. And so you're not going to get as much of that vanilla character from the barrel. You'll get other notes, but just not that specific vanilla. Vanilla very often accompanies color. You'll find darker whiskeys will be more vanilla, mainly because that's a charred oak characteristic.
Gotcha.
Vanillin is what most cheap store-bought vanilla is made from, and that's made from charred oak is how they make that. And so it's no different. It's got that very uniquely vanilla flavor.
So I have a question that's probably, I'm sure I have heard the answer to this on tours many times. Are you going to mix them up?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I will ask Ty.
Yeah, good.
Yeah. So when you smoke the peat and the hardwoods and whatnot. So how do you get that flavor into the whiskey? Like, is it you're smoking it like and putting the barrels in the smokehouse, or how does that work?
No, good question. Yeah. So all of our whiskeys are single malt whiskeys. And so we use malted barley as our primary ingredient.
Okay.
Luckily, barley attracts smoke really well. Other grains like corn, it's a little more difficult to smoke. So to answer your question, it's by smoking the grain.
Wow.
By smoking the very base ingredient that you start with.
Okay.
The barrel is already charred. It's hard to really impart a lot of smoke flavor to a barrel. And so you really need to smoke either the liquid, which is what some distillers are well known at doing excellent products with doing that, or by smoking the grain. So when I say the liquid, by smoking the actual whiskey or the low wines while you're making the whiskey, or by smoking the grain. We chose to smoke the grain. So we'll have shallow racks of grain in our smokehouse, maybe an inch too deep, and we'll smoke the grain for 24 hours. And then after you make a whiskey out of that smoky grain, the whiskey will become smoky. For us, it's a pretty small percentage. It's less than 10% of our grain that we use is smoked. Yet the whiskey itself is still very smoky.
Wow, that's incredible.
It is. It's a lot of it comes through all the way through.
Okay,
it's not,
so now we're tasting
like the whiskeys aren't real, like it's not Ardbeg, Lefroy, that level of smoke. But just by increasing that level, we could reach that level of smoke for sure.
Yeah. No, I think you're good where you are. I'm not a huge fan of the overly.
So again, before we were looking for kind of that sherry note, that almond and that raisin.
Okay.
Now you're going to be looking for a vanilla note.
Okay.
In these three.
And the one that has the most vanilla is probably the Striker, right?
That's
correct.
Yeah, because it's the new oak barrel.
Okay.
And can I add one more note to that? And it'll accompany it. And for us, it's cinnamon as well. So cinnamon and vanilla will go hand in hand.
Okay.
In this particular whiskey that we.
Now, should I smell it before I drink it, or should just drink it so I can try to get it from tasting it?
Smell, then drink.
Okay. Because I feel like I've got the smell down. Well, I don't know. I'm like 10 minutes in. Look at me. I know everything.
Right. Okay. This is, by the way, this is a little hard because I'm trying to, I want to do this too, but I'm trying to be the moderator because I know where everything is, but I would like to kind of play this game too, because I guarantee you, Ty, given enough tries at this, I would be wrong on a lot of these things too. And, even experienced whiskey drinkers will get an idea wrong, and it all depends on how your day went. Like if you're stuffy, if you had something to eat earlier, there's so many variables that go into whether or not you enjoy or get notes from a certain whiskey that I almost wish I wasn't self-influencing. So on the nose,
tasters will sometimes do what's called a triangle test, and they'll taste 2 samples that are similar and then 1 that is not. And it can either be just a daily test of how you're tasting, or it's to kind of help. Can you really pick out a difference or not? Is kind of the idea.
Yeah.
And if you can't pick out that one that's different, then there isn't a difference, or you're just not tasting very well that day. Either one. But it's kind of an important test that you can do sometimes.
Okay, I think I've got my guesses.
Okay.
All right.
The first one was Revenant Oak. The second one was triple distilled, and the third one was Striker.
Look at this.
So Revenant Oak, I totally got the peat, the mossy
right
peat.
Off of it.
That's mostly what I tasted. And I'm only going for one note here.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm excited if I get the one. The second one, I tasted raspberry, which I thought was interesting. I don't eat a lot of raspberry
on
stuff.
the triple distilled?
On the triple distilled.
And keep in mind, this is port finish, so that red fruit kind of note is not unreasonable for that.
And then the third one, the Striker, it was totally vanilla. Like as soon as it hit my lips, I totally got the vanilla.
It hits your lips, it's so good.
It is so good. Oh shoot. I wasn't supposed to say. Well, that lasted. Let's see, how far are we into this?
We got 30
thing?
minutes into our first podcast,
well,
and we already gave a qualitative note.
Okay.
All right.
Pretty good.
So here is the mystery one.
Okay.
Now this one is one of these 3, but not sherry finished.
Oh, okay. So while I'm doing that, Ty, if you're trying to taste a bunch of different things, what do you eat something as a palate cleanser? Like, what do you do to try to reset?
Yeah. It's good. If you have a really bland palate cleanser, something like a cracker, with an unseasoned cracker or something like that is good. If you start getting into, foods with a lot of flavor or seasoning, it's just too much competition. I know it's kind of weird, but something that's really helpful is if you kind of just reset your sniffer. You'll see a lot of people smell their shirt or smell something else. Smell it. And it just completely resets your sniffer. And then so you can kind of smell something different again. Once you start tasting more than 3 or 4 whiskeys, man, you can get burned out really quickly. And so anything you can do to reset your nose, smell something else. I wouldn't go tasting something really dramatically different because, Josh has got it. Smell that elbow. Smell your shirt, because you'll smell like the fabric softener or the detergent or something totally different that has nothing to do with whiskey whatsoever. And then you can kind of bring it back to whiskey again and kind of get a quick reset. I think people do that because it's just right there and it's quick and easy. But you can smell anything that's just completely different and unnatural to whiskey, and then that kind of helps you come back to whiskey again and smell.
Yeah, and by the way, it helps with the coronavirus thing right now. Everybody, supposed to sneeze into your arm, and you can also neutralize. But the reason why a lot of people do that is that your body odor that you have is what you're around all day, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're used to that, if you are your own neutral, then resetting yourself is what kind of allows you to smell a difference in something else, because your brain is trying to pick up differences in pattern. Like, not to get all goofy, but evolutionarily, we've been trained like, oh, there's a different smell. Like your brain is trained to smell differences from moment to moment because you needed to be able to know. It's like, oh my gosh, is a storm coming? Or is there another animal that's going to come after us or something like that? So like picking up differences in smell and variation, we're more acutely keen to that than other things. Yeah. So
our son asked me this afternoon why he smelled a tick. And I was like, you smelled a tick? And then I realized later on, so he got bit by a tick a while back. And it was around the time that I was like doing my hair, and I had sprayed my hairspray, and he assigned the hairspray smell with that episode happening. And so when I hairsprayed my hair today,
Yep.
he was like, oh, because later on I sprayed again, and he's like, that's what I meant. Because I was like, you can't smell a tick. Like you're not smelling a tick. I'm not sure what you're smelling.
Yep.
And that's totally what he was doing.
But it's pattern. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's assignment to moments of life. I mean, everybody's had this experience where you smell something, immediately takes you back to that moment. So.
Well, I'm having a real hard time with this one.
Okay.
So I think it helps to know that we don't have any other triple distilled in the house. So
process of elimination.
just eliminate that one. I think I'm leaning towards it being Revenant Oak because I feel like it doesn't have that extra like kick of the striker.
Okay.
And I'm like the aftertaste, I feel like I'm getting a lot of the peat.
Okay.
But I don't know if I'm right. I'm really not sure because I feel like it smells like a combination of the other.
So which one is it closest to, in your opinion, when you're doing them side by side?
Like you want me to smell it?
Yeah.
Compared.
Like smell this one compared to whichever two you think are most closely similar.
Okay. Do you remember which ones these
I
ones are? Because I don't. Maybe that one.
Because remember, you're taking the sherry note out of this one.
Well, that's hard to do.
Mm-hmm.
It is, because these are very, very heavily sherried whiskeys. So that is tough.
Because this was your first fill of that PX barrel, right?
It was, and the contribution was dramatic.
Okay.
I think it was this one, which I can't remember what I said this one was. Revenant Oak? Was the first one Revenant
that's
Oak?
Striker.
That's Striker.
Mm-hmm.
So this is Striker.
That's Striker.
Oh, wow.
You got it right.
No, didn't I say? I thought this one was. So I compared it to the right place.
You compared it to the right
off
one.
Off of the nose and the taste, I thought it was Revenant Oak.
Yes. But when you did them side by side, you got Striker to Striker minus the sherry note, which is, again, that's showing you that you're getting the notes.
Better than I thought I would do. I'm not going to lie.
Hey, this isn't going to be so bad, right?
Like, okay, I'll survive the next 18 nights.
And by the way,
yeah, you'll be fine.
It's not just Striker. It's not the exact Striker. It's the 123.9 proof Striker from the barrel. Signed by you. By the way.
Fill your own bottle. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, from the anniversary party.
Yeah. So it was that particular barrel. Yeah. So it is Striker, but it's a very particular type of Striker.
Yeah.
But I think that shows that you can have the same type of notes.
Yeah.
And start to notice that pattern within the whiskey.
Yeah. So my next question for you is, which one of your whiskeys do you usually put in the Coke Slurpee that you have in the tasting room?
There we go. That's Sarah.
Yeah.
All right.
You're like, that's what you like to drink.
There we go. So that one's definitely the triple distilled. Triple distilled is the most versatile for cocktails. Yeah. The other two whiskeys are kind of smoky, and that would interfere with kind of the flavor profile we're going for. So
gotcha.
That tasty treat is triple distilled.
Yeah.
So let's AJ Lopez says I like some PX Striker a lot because of how chocolatey, smoky, and smoked cheesy it can get, while also lapping into a date jam. I think that's interesting.
Date jam, yeah.
Like date jam, like dates.
No, he's spot on.
I agree. And like the chocolatey, smoky, that's interesting. A lot of people assign chocolate and smoke in the same combination. Like you'll hear that a lot. Why do you think that is?
Well, to be fair on this one, we use chocolate malt in the Striker. And so chocolate malt actually has nothing to do with chocolate itself. It's just malt that's roasted to kind of the color of milk chocolate.
Right.
Oh, okay.
It's not as dark as it can get. You can get darker malts like roasted barley, which is something they make Guinness beer out of, a very, very dark. Chocolate malt is something you'd use to make a kind of a brown ale if we're talking in the beer world. That's kind of my background. This sort of what I've related to. But that chocolate, flavor will come through. The color doesn't come through, obviously, in the whiskey like it does in beer, but the flavors do. And so we put a lot of chocolate malts in that whiskey because we want to have some of the really dark chocolate flavors. We feel that those really accompany the roasted character really well. And so by kind of playing with those specialty grains, we can get some of those underlying flavors. But no, I agree, Spencer. It is something that you'll often hear that with. I think it's just, especially the dark, bitter chocolate, you almost get a roasted character out of it. You know, the really high cocoa stuff, and so that's probably where that comes from.
Yeah, and credit to Daniel Whittington here in his sommelier program. But one of the things that he does really well is talk about how, you can take, if you've ever heard of the word synesthesia, right, where you have one sense that makes you remind you of another sense, right? So some people say they can hear colors and they can smell, numbers and things like that. But there is, I think, a little bit of synesthetic behavior with everybody, right? Everybody knows what light and dark kind of matches with, low volume and high volume, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like those are two, like those are visual versus auditory, but you still know that like dark is usually low and bright is usually high volume, right? Or pointy and rounded. And, certain words sound pointy, like staccato kind of things. And then the other words sound rounded, like, James Earl Jones.
Yeah.
And you can do that with whiskey too, is you can use those same reference points that you have in other things. So say you're a musician, you may want to use a lot of musical words to describe things. Or if you're a visual person, you may want to describe more colors. Like I know for me, before I ever got into be able to know what I was tasting and smelling, it would be like, oh, that's yellow. I don't know why. I would
Really?
smell it and I would be like, that's a yellow whiskey. This one's a red whiskey. That one's a green one. And I don't know why, but it somewhere in that spectrum of colors was somewhere in that spectrum of smells for me. And that kind of helped me like figure out, oh, okay, well, this one is kind of pointy, bright yellow. This other one's kind of like mellow maroon or something. And that's a way to kind of help your brain talk from left side to right side.
Yeah.
Cool.
This is where she makes fun of me for being stupid.
Oh no.
It's really interesting to me, Spencer, because you hear of musicians talk about seeing color sometimes, like real intense musicians can see color when they play. And I've never heard of anybody talking about that with their tasting, but I fully believe it.
Well, it's all, I mean, you only have your five senses, maybe your sixth if you have the intuition, but you have those senses and they're all going to the same place in your brain. So sometimes they can get mixed up. Yeah. Sometimes, who knows? Everybody has their own perspective, right?
Yeah.
So really. I'm actually really impressed with what you've done so far.
I am too. I'm not to brag on myself, but I did not think it was going to go this well.
And one of my other favorite things is that, every time I have an Andalusia whiskey tie, now, because we've been to your distillery so many times, now your whiskey is that place, that physical place where you walk onto property and you smell those smells, right? And if you,
and that's house flavor. You'll find it in different distilleries. You'll kind of taste a range of products, but always sort of get that house flavor. I recognize Balcones as having a really unique, recognizable house flavor that I can taste in all their products, and I love it. Just one example. And so that's kind of neat. We're just kind of finding out what our house flavor is.
Yeah.
How would you describe your own house flavor?
That's a good question.
I'm sorry, what was it?
I was saying, how would you describe your own house flavor for Andalusia?
Gosh, yeah. I don't know. I'm so submerged in it that I'd have probably a hard time identifying it, to be honest, because it's one of those things, since it is so repetitious across the brand lineup. I think we dip into congeners like dark chocolate and leather and umami and kind of a meatiness in all of our whiskeys. Not as much the triple distill, because distillations, subsequent distillations kind of remove those things, but especially in the striker and the revenant oak, that chocolate, I've always called it umami. It's almost a savory thing and a meaty thing going on almost. So yeah.
Well, so we've been joined here by Jared Hempstead as well in the comments. So I decided to share that. He has some. He says pyrazine is present in smoke and chocolate as well as coffee and peppers. So you are getting a particular chemical compound.
There you go.
Okay.
So
well, there you have it.
Little preview for what's to come tomorrow night with Balcones and Jared.
The man himself. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, in my mind, Ty, your stuff does kind of like, I think, smoke, but not in maybe what you would traditionally think of like a Scotch, a heavily peated smoked Scotch. Not that way when I smell one of those. But I do think it's unique to also your property and your building and your like the whole thing. But it definitely, that's what I get is kind of a.
Smoke is one of those things that is there, and you don't really need to push it. No, they're awesome, really great, super smoky products, and those are kind of a different experience, and they're fun in and of themselves. But smoke is so noticeable. Coming from the beer world, so many smoky beers are just way too smoky. From my palate. They were awesome to sip and to taste. And man, it was hard to finish one. So we wanted to have something that was obviously smoky. You definitely don't have to search for it, but it's not going to be a face melter. What I often call the Lafroigs and the Lagavulins, the face melters. They're awesome whiskeys and fun to experience. And we're going to do those. We're going to do some one-offs of extra peated and extra smoky whiskeys. But we feel for the core lineup and for drinking whiskey. That we wanted something just a little more, I hate to say approachable, but something where smoke isn't going to dominate quite so much. It'll be omnipresent, but not dominant. Yeah.
And I have to say, like I mentioned earlier, like I'm not a huge fan of the Lagavulins, the super smoky peaty. Like that's not my jam, but I've always enjoyed your line. And I think that's because of that it's there and it's present and you experience it, but you're not overwhelmed by it. And it's really enjoyable.
Yeah. So with just a few minutes left in the hour, we're at about 9 minutes left. I want to ask everybody to submit a question to Ty or us if you'd like, but hopefully Ty, because he's much more expert than we are.
I think you got all the expertise out of me you're going to get tonight.
Hey, I'm very...
Thank you.
You might be a little bit
and head out.
Yeah. Well, I think I had two great leaders here in this. Wow. You guys made it a whole lot easier.
Sorry.
No, but seriously, Ty, your notes to me earlier was super helpful for what to look for.
What'd you say there, Ty? We talked over you there. Sorry.
No, I was just joking. She needs to pull a Costanza and say, "I'm out of here. Good job."
Exactly.
No more. We're done.
All right. Kyle says, "What does Ty drink when it's not Andalusia?" It's a great question.
Okay. Good question. He's going to expose my biases. My biases are really towards malt whiskeys, and so I feel like I can appreciate a good bourbon or appreciate a good rye. But it's not something I enjoy drinking quite as much. And so malt forward, malt whiskeys, from Irish whiskeys to Highland Scotches, Japanese whiskeys that really showcase the malt. I can get into some smoke. I'm not a big peat bomb guy, but the whiskeys that really showcase malt. I'm a big fan of Westland and Stranahan's and Westward and Balcones and Ranger Creek. Awesome single malts, Pfluger single malts, all really awesome single malts.
Well, and that's you make what you love, right? So that's not you want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see here. Is the cask strength still available? Laura asks.
Yeah, it is. I think we've got a couple cask strength options. The 3-pack sherry 3-pack that we tasted tonight is cask strength. And then also we do a cask strength striker, which is kind of a fill your own bottle. You can come to the distillery and fill the bottle yourself straight out of the barrel.
That's cool.
So,
I didn't realize that all the time. I thought maybe that was just an anniversary party thing. So that's so cool.
Yeah, that's where we debuted it. And then maybe about a month after the anniversary party, we just drug that same barrel back out and just kept it going. So it's still going today.
Here's a great question from YouTube. Jay asks, how can someone like myself who's been eating barbecue for 50 years and love that mesquite smell have a glass of Highland Park and not like it?
That's a rhetorical question, I think, right there.
I you know what? I honestly think, Jay, that you're talking about different types of phenolic smoke, honestly. Mm-hmm. and even a very different, like a peaty smoke versus that mesquite, which is that, again, I want to use that point, like sharpie, pointy mesquite kind of aggressiveness that you can have, where peat is a little bit more rounded and phenolic and salty, if you ask me. And it all depends on what you kind of grew up with, right? And so that's why I think I love smoky whiskeys, obviously, but I really, really enjoy Striker because I'm used to that barbecue note, you know? So let's see.
Yeah, I find to be kind of a oily smoke. This is just what my take on it, almost like petroleum oily smoke. So as you're driving down the highway and they're retarring the surface of the highway, you know, that sort of petroleum smoke versus sweet candied bacon smoke, or kind of the two extremes of smoke, and that's just how I perceive it. But if that's helpful to anybody else.
No, absolutely.
There were a question here from Josh Galladay. Ty, what's the best cast finish project you have coming up, and why is it Madeira?
Well, Josh, you're wrong. It's not Madeira. It is going to be a good one, but I think the next one will be probably Mount Gay rum. We just did dessert wine, PX finished, and so we got 3 barrels from the oldest rum distillery in the world, Mount Gay rum in Barbados, and we filled them like a year ago. So they got their normal 2 years aging, and we actually filled them before PX, and so they've been sitting in those barrels for about a year. That's probably going to be the next one up, and I'm really looking forward to it. The rum barrels just produce just this beautiful kind of cotton candy sweetness to them that are just really lovely, and so we're looking forward to that one. Normally, Josh knows what he's talking about, but not this time. So.
Well, here's a question about, and I'll kind of answer this in advance, but Lance asked, when can we expect a pop-up tasting roadshow in Fort Worth? Well, Lance, as soon as all this is done, then maybe there will be more opportunities for that. But you do tasting events occasionally around the state. Ty, talk about what you had planned before this thing happened and what you hope to do in the future.
Yeah, we're always, Tommy, my business partner, and I are doing a lot more traveling now, doing tastings at liquor stores and private events, and we're looking forward to doing more for whiskey clubs and anybody else that wants to have us show up and do a tasting for them. They can reach out to us and do that. But yeah, no, everything's sort of on the back burner at this point. We're going to have to just kind of completely reboot here in a few months.
Yeah.
Okay. Nathan Clark asks, rum. So is there any triple distilled aging in the rum?
No. So we did double distillation on our batch of rum, which has not been released yet. We did a agricole rum, or rum agricole. I call it agricole rum because I don't want it to seem like it is rum agricole, which is a specific thing. But essentially, we're talking about sugarcane juice rum, not rum that's been made from molasses or sugar, but from the sugarcane juice itself, from the raw ingredient. We drove down to South Texas and got about 3,000 pounds of sugarcane from San Benito, a little Catholic church in San Benito, had some sugarcane growing behind it, and we got the priest to bless it for us, and we harvested it and brought it back, and it took about a week to squeeze it all. And so we're excited to release that probably this summer.
Wow.
This is what we're thinking about.
That's cool.
But to answer his question, we did double distillation. We wanted to really have it full flavored. We wanted to have, one of the beauties of doing sugarcane juice rum is that you get all the terroir from where it's from. Once sugarcane juice has been made into sugar and molasses, you pretty much lose all of the essence of the plant, of the cane itself. So where it came from really doesn't matter so much anymore. But when you can use the plant itself in its original form, you get all the flavors. So depending on the soil and the weather, just like a grape or any other fruit where you talk about terroir. And so we're excited to see what San Benito South Texas rum is going to taste like.
I can't wait for that. Let me have one last question here. It'll be a little bit of a preview for tomorrow night. But again, Jared Hempstead says, Ty, you ever going to brew beer again?
Oh, man. Oh, probably not, unless I can come down there and brew a batch of beer with you guys. That's probably my only hope. So.
well, Ty, thank you so much
Yes.
for kind of helping us get this whole thing started as our tour through the trail gets going. Tomorrow night we will have Jared Hempstead with Balcones, and we're going to go through 3 Balcones whiskeys and talk with Jared about that. So we're really looking forward to it. But Ty, do you have any last words about what you guys are going to be doing for the next few months, obviously, and where people can find your products if they need to, especially if they can find it for delivery? Where should they look?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, we've got our products available at Total Wine, Specs. I think very soon we'll be in Twin. And at the distillery, we'll have some fun special projects coming up. We have our super peated Revenant Oak coming up. Probably almost would have been released by now, but we're going to hold off maybe another month or two and release it. Probably as things start to open back up, we'll have rum and a Texas brandy being released this summer. And then we're excited to release that Mount Gay 3-pack probably for the holiday season. So yeah, we're looking forward to some fun stuff this year. Thanks for having me on this on the very first episode, you guys.
Yes, thank you so much, Ty. You made this a whole lot easier. Thank you.
We are looking forward to everybody, seeing everybody again on the trail, which could be a month or more. We don't know yet, but as soon as we do, we hope that one of the reasons for this podcast is that we want everybody to keep these brands top of mind, because they're doing amazing things, literally saving lives right now. And that's not a joke, guys. Like, whiskey is saving lives. So we appreciate everything that they're doing. And we hope that all of you that are watching and all of you that are going to watch this later will see these brands and go visit them and go pick up the bottles if you can. Yeah. And do everything you can to support these brands right now. If you want to support us in our efforts to keep the sanitizer program going throughout the state, there's a lot of coordination going on. We had calls with the Department of Transportation and FDA today, and there's a lot of stuff going on. But if you want to support us, go to TexasWhiskeyTrailStore.com and buy one of those Still Strong TX t-shirts. Yeah. And that'll help everything that we're working on. So, Ty, thank you so much again. Looking forward to seeing you in person again once this social distancing stuff is out of the way.
Thanks, guys. Y'all stay safe.
Okay.
Take care. Thank you all for your time. Thank you all for being a part of this with us. And we'll look forward to doing it tomorrow night. Jared, we'll see you tomorrow.
Good.
All right.
Night, guys.
Good night. Take care.
Bye.